It was started with a rainstorm, the kind of rain that misted the windshield and soaked through denim before you reached the second step. Somewhere along a deserted stretch of Highway 212 in rural Montana, Eva Lynn spotted him. Just a shadow at first, head down, boots dragging, an army duffel bag clinging to his back like a weight. She could have driven past. Most people would have. But something, instinct maybe, memory maybe, hit the brakes. He didn't ask for help. Didn't even look up when she rolled down the window. She offered to drive him. A thermos of gas station coffee. A dry seat in silence. He said his name was Colton, nothing more. The next morning, he was gone. No note, no goodbye, just a Navy SEAL cap on her passenger seat. 6 years later, just as she was about to close the gas station for good, someone knocked on her door. And everything changed. Watch this video until the end, because what happened after that knock will restore your faith in quiet heroism. Don't forget to hit subscribe for more real-life stories that leave a mark. And while you're here, comment below where you're watching and what time it is in your part of the world. We're building a global circle of kindness, one story at a time. Eva Lynn didn't believe in luck. She believed in spark plugs, in black coffee, and in holding things together with zip ties and grit. At 38, she'd stopped hoping for miracles and settled into the quiet rhythm of survival. She ran a one-pump gas station and convenience store on the edge of nowhere, 50 miles from the nearest chain store, and even further from anything resembling a safety net. The station had been her father's. Before that, her grandfather's. A squat concrete box with sun-faded siding, a rusted Coke machine, and a flickering open sign that worked more on faith than electricity. When her father passed 5 years ago, Eva took over, mostly out of obligation. She didn't love the work, but she loved the land it sat on, the long view of pine ridges to the west, the distant howl of coyotes at night, and the way the horizon always looked just a little different at sunrise. She raised her daughter, Harper, in a trailer behind the station. Just the two of them. Harper was 9, now sharp as flint, curious, and growing too fast. She spent her afternoons drawing galaxies in chalk on the pavement while Eva counted bills behind the register, wondering which ones could be paid this month and which would have to wait. Eva was the kind of woman people called strong because she didn't cry in public. But strength, she knew, was just another word for loneliness with responsibilities. She patched leaking pipes with duct tape, kept a generator running with borrowed parts, and baked corn muffins in an old toaster oven for the regulars who stopped by for fuel and warmth in equal measure. The regulars called her Miss Eva and meant it with affection. Truckers, linemen, traveling nurses, people who passed through and remembered her smile, her dependable service, her ability to fix a flat tire in 15 minutes flat. But behind the counter, Eva kept a ledger of invisible debts, repairs she couldn't afford, property taxes she couldn't cover, and letters from the bank that she no longer opened right away. She didn't complain. Complaining never paid the light bill. She just got up every morning, poured 2 cups of coffee, one for herself, one for her absent father, and opened the station doors to another day of weathered bills, chipped nails, and moments of stillness she collected like dimes. So when the soldier appeared that night, soaked, limping, silent, it didn't feel like a twist of fate. It felt like something inevitable. Like the world was asking her to remember who she was beneath the debt, the exhaustion, and the routine. She never told anyone about him. Not even Trish, her no-nonsense friend who handled the propane refills and didn't believe in mystery. Not Harper, who would have turned him into a storybook hero. Not even herself, really. She kept his seal cap in a drawer behind the register, tucked under her father's old work gloves, as if it had always been there. And for 6 years, life went on. The station aged. Harper grew. The debts mounted. Eva held it all together with a quiet desperation that no one saw, not the customers, not the sheriff who occasionally checked in, not even the loan officer who finally sent the letter she couldn't ignore. The station would be sold. The land reclaimed. The doors shut for good. She stared at that final notice for nearly an hour, one rainy Tuesday afternoon, her hands trembling, the world pressing down like a storm cloud. And then, just when she thought it was all over, when she believed the world had forgotten the one kindness she never asked to be repaid. Someone knocked. It had been a Tuesday evening, early fall, when the wind carried the scent of pine needles and wet asphalt. The forecast said drizzle. The sky delivered more sheets of cold rain that turned the road to a mirror and the gas station windows to blur. Eva had just locked the register for the night. The lights above the pump buzzed, casting a sickly yellow glow across the lot. She was reaching for the breaker switch when she saw him. A figure on the edge of the highway, hunched and trudging, more silhouette than man. Boots soaked, shoulders slumped beneath the weight of a battered duffel. She watched him through the rain, just for a moment. Most people in her position wouldn't have. But Eva had learned to read pain the way some folks read weather by instinct. Something about his gait, the way he leaned too heavily to the left with each step, told her this wasn't just a drifter. He was military, or had been, and he was barely holding it together. She opened the door. The bell chimed, and he looked up, startled. His face was half hidden under a hood, streaked with rain and something else, ash maybe, or road dirt. His right cheek bore the faint outline of a healing burn, his eyes sunken from exhaustion. "Need shelter?" she asked casually, like it was something she said every day. He blinked, then nodded once. Didn't speak. Just stood there, dripping onto the concrete like a man who had forgotten how to ask. Eva pointed toward the convenience store. "I've got hot coffee and a heater that mostly works. Come in before you drown." He followed slowly, careful with every step. Once inside, the man shed his soaked jacket, revealing a plain black t-shirt and camo trousers torn at the thigh, dried blood caked along the seam. She handed him a towel and a thermos. "Name's Eva." "Colton," he said after a pause, his voice low, raw. He took a long drink of the coffee. Didn't comment on the taste. She nodded toward his leg. "You need a medic?" He shook his head. "It's old. Just flares up when it's cold." "You served?" "Still am, technically. Was supposed to report to a rehab facility. Got delayed." Eva didn't push. The quiet between them wasn't awkward, it was survival. He was the kind of man who'd learned to live inside silence. She respected that. He stayed less than an hour, just long enough to stop shivering, to warm his hands and rest his eyes. He never asked for money, never told his story. He just sat near the propane heater, with that haunted stillness only combat could carve. When the rain slowed, he stood. "Thank you," he said, voice steadier now. "You didn't have to." "I know," she replied. "That's the point." He left with a nod and disappeared down the road without a look back. Eva returned to the counter, flipped off the neon sign, and found something tucked beneath the towel he'd used. It was a dark blue ball cap, weathered, sweat-stained, the golden seal trident stitched into the crown. She knew what it meant. Knew you didn't just leave that behind. She held it in both hands for a long time, rain still pattering on the roof, heart quiet but full of questions. No name, no number, no goodbye. Just a symbol of something unfinished, and a silence that stayed with her long after the lights went out. The letter came in an envelope too thick to be anything good. Bold black ink. Return address from the county. Eva didn't open it right away. She already knew. The bank had been circling for months. Missed payments, deferred property taxes, loan terms that tightened like a noose each quarter. She'd kept the lights on by selling homemade jerky, rotating tires for half price, and heating the store with firewood when the propane ran low. But you can't outrun interest. You can't patch a roof with hope. She sat at the counter after closing, hands trembling as she slit the envelope open with the edge of a butter knife. Final notice of foreclosure. 30 days. Then the property would be seized, the land auctioned. The station, the trailer, the soil her daughter had planted, carrots in all of it gone. Harper didn't know. She was asleep in the back room, curled beneath a quilt with her favorite flashlight and a picture book she'd practically memorized. Eva watched her from the doorway that night, one hand pressed to the wall like she needed it to stay upright. She couldn't bear to tell her. Not yet. The next day, she tried everything. She called the bank, pleaded with a manager who sounded bored, She offered to sell inventory, restructure payments, hand over titles. The answer came in the form of silence and a dial tone. She dug through every drawer for solutions. Old coupons, faded business cards, even a stash of quarters her father had saved. Just in case. She went over every receipt, every ledger. But math doesn't lie. The numbers were ruthless. Eva thought about selling the seal cap. She didn't want to. It felt wrong, like trading away someone else's dignity. But desperate people don't get to be sentimental. Still, when her hand reached for the drawer, she stopped. The hat lay right where she'd placed it, 6 years agar-tucked under the gloves her father wore every winter. She stared at it for a long time. Then, she closed the drawer. Some things didn't belong to the world of desperation. At night, the ache grew worse. She'd lie awake, staring at the ceiling, heart pounding like thunder in the silence. She imagined the eviction sheriff's cruiser idling outside, Harper watching as strangers hauled away their lives. Trish noticed first. "You're not eating," she said, wiping down a shelf while Eva stared blankly at the cash register. "Just tired," Eva mumbled. "Don't lie to me, Lynn. I know what foreclosure weight looks like." Eva didn't answer. She didn't have the strength. That night, Trish dropped off a casserole and a six-pack. No questions asked. They ate on the porch in silence, Eva too numb to cry. The next morning, the power flickered again. The coffee machine sputtered. A fuse popped. Eva sat on the back steps of the trailer, head in her hands. The world felt like it was folding in on itself. For 6 years, she told herself it had been a small thing that rainy night. Just a ride. A gesture. She hadn't saved anyone. She hadn't expected anything. But now, with everything crumbling, she allowed herself a single dangerous thought. What if it mattered more than she knew? She didn't say it aloud, didn't write it down. But that night, as thunder rolled in the distance and Harper slept peacefully inside, Eva whispered to the dark sky, "If anyone's listening, I need help." And then she waited. Not for a miracle, just a sign. It happened on a Wednesday. Overcast skies, temperature dropping, wind sharp with the bite of oncoming winter. Eva had just shut off the pump for what she believed might be the last time. 30 days had turned into 7. 7 days until everything vanished. Land, station, trailer, everything her father once told her to protect, no matter how rough it gets. Harper was inside the trailer working on homework. Trish had offered to take her for the weekend, but Eva couldn't bring herself to say yes. She didn't want her daughter to watch her unravel, but she didn't want to let her go either. The silence outside was heavy. Then came the sound, deep, steady, low, engines. 2 black SUVs pulled into the gravel lot, flanking a matte green Humvee. No markings, no government plates. Just clean, quiet presence. Eva stepped out onto the front stoop, wiping her hands on a rag out of habit, though they weren't dirty. She squinted into the wind as the driver's door of the lead SUV opened. He stepped out. Tall, steady, clean-shaven now, in full-dress uniform. The seal trident gleamed on his chest, matched by the silver oak leaf insignia on his collar. Eva's breath caught. "Colton?" He walked forward with calm purpose, stopping just a few feet from her. His voice, when he spoke, was deeper than she remembered, but steady, clear. "Hello, Eva." She stared. He looked. Whole. Changed, but still carrying the quiet weight in his eyes. I never knew your full name." "Lieutenant Commander Colton Ray," he said, now acting with Special Operations Outreach Division. The title meant nothing to her. The moment did. He reached into his coat pocket and held out a heavy envelope. "This is overdue," he said softly. "But it's only the beginning." She didn't move, just stood there, towel still in her hand, heart thudding. "What is it?" "Proof of debt relief," came another voice. A man stepped out from the second SU-Volder, Hispanic, wearing captain's insignia. "I'm Captain Miguel Ortega. We're here representing the Office of Veteran Civilian Partnership and SEAL Team 5. Eva blinked. "Two don't understand." Colton looked past her toward the station. then toward the trailer behind it. "You gave me shelter," he said, "when I had nothing. Not even a name. You didn't ask who I was. You didn't flinch at the scars. You just saw someone cold and broken, and you opened your door." Eva's throat tightened. "It was just a ride, a towel, some coffee." "That night," Colton said, voice shaking slightly, "I was going to disappear. I'd left rehab. I was drinking again. I had no ID, no command, no direction. But then you saw me. You treated me like a person." He took a breath. "I didn't disappear that night because of you. Instead, I reached out. I found my way back. And in the years since, I've served, led, and lived because of that moment." The captain stepped forward and opened a black folder. "Ms. Eva Lynn, by joint recommendation of the Special Forces Veteran Resilience Network and the Department of Defense, your mortgage has been purchased in full and forgiven, effective immediately." Eva's knees went weak. She gripped the doorframe to steady herself. Colton gently placed the envelope in her hands. "The station is yours again. The land, the trailer, all of it." "But why?" "Because some debts," Colton said, "aren't measured in dollars. They're measured in lives given back." The second SUV door opened. A third man stepped out, lean, dark-skinned, his right hand missing below the elbow. He gave her a quiet nod and walked past her toward the broken station sign. Without a word, he reached into a toolbox and began replacing the flickering bulb. More movement. Another figure approached an older woman in army fatigues with a notepad and measuring tape. "We're rewiring the main circuit," she said. "Power grid in this place is a lawsuit waiting to happen." Eva stood speechless as, one by one, members of the unit emerged not to fight, not to bark orders, but to help. Quietly, respectfully, purposefully. Within an hour, the siding on the trailer was being patched. The gas pump nozzle was replaced. Even the wooden bench out front, the one her father used to sit on, was sanded down and restained. Trish pulled up around 5:30, took one look, and nearly dropped her coffee. "What in God's name?" "Help," Eva whispered, voice thick. It came. That evening, as the sun dropped behind the tree line and the smell of sawdust and fresh coffee mingled in the air, Colton stood beside her on the porch. "I brought you something," he said. He handed her a small black box. Inside was a polished challenge coin side engraved with the seal insignia. On the other, she didn't ask. She just acted. Eva closed her hand around it. She didn't speak, just nodded. Because sometimes, the loudest thank you is knowing someone came back whole. They sat on the porch steps as the sky faded from lavender to ink, a thermos of coffee between them. Colton had taken off his jacket, now in just his dress shirt with sleeves rolled up, revealing burn scars and faint surgical lines that traveled from wrist to elbow. He didn't cover them. Not anymore. Eva held the challenge coin in her lap, turning it slowly between her fingers. She hadn't spoken much since the men arrived, too overwhelmed to ask questions, too stunned by the quiet efficiency with which her world had been stitched back together. But now, as the wind settled and Harper laughed somewhere behind the trailer chasing fireflies with Trish, Eva looked over and asked the only question that truly mattered. "What happened after that night?" Colton exhaled slowly, his eyes locked on the horizon like he was seeing ghosts only he could name. "I walked for 2 days after I left you," he said. "Didn't know where I was going. Just knew I couldn't stay. I was still drunk half the time, limping on a leg that hadn't healed right, carrying a pack full of guilt and nothing else." Eva stayed quiet, letting the silence do its work. "I'd been in a fire," he continued. "Compound in northern Syria. Intel was bad. We lost 3 men. I was inside when the blast hit. Crawled out. Got everyone I could. But," his voice broke slightly, "not all of them." He looked down at his hands, flexed them like they didn't belong to him. "They sent me home with a medal and a pat on the back. Then came the nightmares, the discharge, the bottle. I checked into a rehab facility in Colorado. Lasted 6 weeks before I ran. Thought maybe I could disappear. He paused, glancing at her. Then I met you. Eva blinked, the weight of his words settling on her chest. You didn't ask who I was, he said. Didn't flinch at the way I looked. You offered warmth without conditions. And that night, I didn't feel like a ghost. She swallowed hard. I didn't do anything. You did everything, Colton said, because you reminded me what dignity looked like. He reached into his inside pocket and pulled out a folded photo. 6 men in dusty fatigues gathered in front of a burnt-out Humvee. Some were smiling, some weren't. One stood in the middle bandaged, leaning on a crutch. Eva recognized him immediately, though he looked younger, softer. I sent this to my team 3 days after I left your place, he said. Told them I'd made contact with a civilian who reminded me who I used to be. It was enough to get me pulled back into the support network. Counseling, reintegration. He tapped the photo. 5 of these guys came home because I got my act together. And I got my act together because of you. Eva pressed her fingers to her mouth. Colton looked back at the trailer. And it wasn't just me. You became kind of a myth in our circle. The woman at the gas station. The one who didn't look away. I didn't know, she whispered. You weren't supposed to, he said. That's what made it real. They sat for a long time after that, just watching dusk settle over Montana like a blanket. Somewhere nearby, the sounds of drills and laughter mixed with the clink of tools being packed away. Before Colton left that night, he looked at her one last time. Most people don't get to know if their kindness mattered, he said. You do. You saved lives, Eva. Not with a gun, not with orders, but with coffee, a towel, and a ride. Then he stepped down from the porch, boots crunching gravel. And for the first time in 6 years, Eva Lynn didn't feel like she was standing still in someone else's story. She had written part of it. In the weeks that followed, the gas station didn't just survive. It transformed. The siding was replaced. The old flickering sign now glowed steady and bright. A new roof went up over the trailer. The pump handles were replaced. But what changed most wasn't what people could see. It was what they felt when they pulled in off the highway. People stayed longer now. They lingered over coffee, not just fuel. A new bulletin board was installed by the door. Resources for veterans. It read-filled with contacts, support numbers, and hand-scrawled notes from people who'd quietly found their way to the station after hearing the story passed from unit to unit like legend. Eva didn't advertise. She didn't have to. They just came. Some to say thank you, others to fix things without asking. A wiry woman in army greens rewired the pump meter. A mechanic who served in Iraq rebuilt the alternator in her generator. One day, a burly man in biker leathers arrived, nodded once, then disappeared behind the trailer. When Eva stepped outside hours later, there was a brand new water heater installed, paid for, installed, working. She tried to stop them at first. You don't have to do this, she'd say. But the responses were always the same. Yes, we do. They didn't take up space, didn't pose for photos. They just did what needed doing and disappeared into the Montana dusk. Colton came back twice. Each time, he brought someone with him. Once, a quiet young man with sunken eyes and a nervous posture. He didn't speak much, just sat on the porch drinking coffee, staring out at the pines. After he left, Eva found a note under his cup. You reminded me I wasn't disposable. Another time, a woman with a prosthetic leg helped Harper fix the broken chicken coop. She said little but taught Harper how to brace a fence post in rocky ground. Before she drove off, she handed Eva a folded piece of paper and application to a Department of Veterans Affairs community initiative. You have a voice, she said simply. People listen to it, whether you realize it or not. Eva laughed awkwardly. I'm not a leader. I fix coffee machines and change oil. The woman looked her dead in the eye. And that's exactly why you should be in the room. Eventually, Eva said yes. Her first meeting as a community liaison was held in a church basement in Bozeman. She wore jeans and boots, not sure what she was supposed to bring. She brought stories instead. About her father, a Vietnam vet who never liked fireworks. About Harper, who asked too many questions and never enough at the same time. About Colton, though never by name. She spoke plainly, from the gut, and people listened. Word spread, slowly, quietly. Veterans started stopping by the station just to sit for a while. Some didn't say anything at all. One man who hadn't spoken in public in 4 years stood in the shade of the awning one afternoon and simply whispered, "I'm still here." Eva nodded. "I know." She started leaving out free sandwiches in a cooler by the side door, built a wooden sign and carved the words by hand. "If you've served, this place serves you." No one asked questions. No one tracked names. And yet, the story grew. It wasn't about charity. It was about honor, about being seen, about one woman who never asked for recognition but who got it anyway, in the most human, lasting way possible. Not with awards, not with applause, but with community. With someone fixing a broken hinge without being asked, with a bag of groceries left on her porch, with a dozen eggs Harper found one morning, hand-marked with a note. These come from someone you reminded what peace feels like. Spring came early that year. The snowmelt soaked the edge of the pine ridge, and the dirt behind the trailerons packed and dry-turned soft, rich, ready. Eva and Harper dug small trenches for carrots and beans, just like they had years ago, before the letters, before the panic, before the knock that changed everything. There was peace now, but not the fragile kind that comes from holding your breath. This peace had roots. It held. The gas station still creaked in the wind. The coffee still burned a little on the edges. Eva still cursed under her breath when the receipt printer jammed. But now, she laughed after. Harper ran barefoot through the grass again. She wrote stories about mystery soldiers in her school journal and asked every new visitor, "Are you one of the helpers?" And sometimes, they were. One Friday morning, on Eva's birthday, a small box arrived. No return address. Just her name, handwritten. Inside was a framed photograph. Colton, standing at a podium in Washington, D.C., one hand over his heart. Projected behind him, larger than life on a massive LED screen, was the image of a navy blue seal cap resting on a gas station counter. Below it, a caption. She didn't ask. She just acted. And beneath that, in bold, Eva Lynn, Civilian Honor Recipient, SEAL Team 5. She stood still for a long time, holding the frame like it might vanish if she blinked. Then, she hung it beside the pantry, right next to the shelf where she packed lunches for Harper every morning. That afternoon, she painted a new sign by hand and placed it at the edge of the garden. Free produce for veterans, no questions, no limits. And underneath, in smaller lettering, "What you grow in quiet places will one day feed someone you'll never meet. People Camino, always for the tomatoes, not always for the food." Some came for silence. Some for recognition. Some for the unspoken welcome of a woman who had once offered coffee to a stranger in the rain and never looked away. Eva didn't give speeches. She didn't need to. She gave presence. She gave something rarer than gold in this world. The feeling of being seen without being judged. And that more than coins, more than medals, more than any spotlight was her gift. Somewhere, in another part of the country, a soldier might still tell the story. There's a woman at a gas station in Montana. She doesn't ask who you were. She just hands you a towel and says, "Come in." And somewhere else, another might whisper, "She saved my brother. She saved my captain. She saved me." But Eva never kept a list, never counted what came back. Because the day she gave Colton a ride, she wasn't trying to save anyone. She was just trying to do the right thing. And in a world that often forgets the power of small kindnesses, that one moment unspoken, unplanned kept echoing. Long after the station doors closed for the night. Long after the rain stopped. Long after the world moved on. The echo stayed. Because what Eva grew in quiet places never stopped growing. Eva's story reminds us that true kindness isn't loud. It doesn't demand recognition or repayment. It simply shows up in the rain, in silence, in moments when no one else does. Eva didn't offer help because she expected something in return. She didn't know Colton's name or rank. All she saw was a human being in pain. And that decision to act without hesitation, without judgment, is what changed everything. The lesson is simple, yet profound. Small acts can have infinite ripples. A ride, a warm cup of coffee, a dry place to rest. These gestures, when given freely, can heal wounds we'll never see and rescue people we'll never fully know. In a world where we're taught to look out for ourselves, Eva shows us the power of doing the opposite of showing up for others, especially when it's inconvenient or uncomfortable. Her compassion reignited purpose in a broken soldier, inspired an entire unit, and ultimately transformed her own life in ways she never imagined. This story is a quiet anthem for anyone who's ever wondered if their goodness mattered. It does. Even if no one sees it today, one day, it might save someone's life.